guys. Way to go. Keep it going. Good job, guys. All right, Paul. I see you. All right, Travis. Finish on. Coach Carl.
Great job, guys.
Hey there, it's Coach Curl here, and welcome to episode 251 of the Today's Leader podcast. Today is a real pleasure and an honour as I introduce you to Ian Clough. Now, Ian is the chairman of the Brian Bell Group, a major organisation in Papua New Guinea. Now, Ian's leadership career has been an inspiring one, to say the least. While Sir Brian Bell was his grandfather, Ian forged ultimately a national career in Australia with some of Australia's leading retailers and household names like Kmart, Bunnings, Coles Liquor, Coles and Target, forging his own career before returning to the family business. Now, during our conversation, Ian shared his beliefs around leadership and how important traits like warmth and empathy are. He shares an amazing and incredible example of why intent in communication is so important. He shared his ability to see into the future with the correct tip that the Melbourne Storm were going to win the NRL Premiership with, of course, Justin Olam, the PNG star in the Melbourne side. Now, Ian also spoke of the Sir Brian Bell Foundation and the work being done in that space supporting the entire PNG community. The pride and purpose in his voice is noticeable as he recites the many great programs the foundation has brought to life in what is really just a very short time frame, and the ultimate good that it's doing in Papua New Guinea. Now, Ian's journey started in Australia at a Kmart in Townsville at the same time that I was stationed there in my career. Now, we became family friends, and while Ian is always incredibly busy, we often find time to catch up for dinner as a family dinner when he's back in Brisbane. I've been proud of what Ian has built throughout his career, and I believe there are so many gems that he speaks to during our interview. Let's hear from Think and Grow Business, our partner, and then it's my pleasure to bring you Ian Clough.
The podcast is brought to you by Think and Grow Business, the home of the Think and Grow Business Mastermind. If you're serious about growing your business, get serious and join a mastermind group today. Find out more at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au.
It's my pleasure to welcome to the Today's Leader podcast. We have Ian Clough, the chairman of the Brian Bell Group in Papua New Guinea. How are you, Ian?
I'm good, thanks, Tony.
I was going to call you Cluffy, but I
wasn't sure what level of formality we were maintaining, so I'm glad you paused.
Absolutely, Ian. Tell us first up. Tell the listeners now. PNG is probably not a what would be considered a heavyweight in world affairs. But Brian Bell Group has got a very proud history within that nation. So share just a little bit with our listeners the history of the Brian Bell Group.
I'm more than happy to. What I might say, though, is being Australia's closest neighbour, Papua New Guinea is getting a lot of international interest. Obviously, geopolitically, Australia is suddenly a lot more interested, given that China has become Papua New Guinea's best friend in recent years. So, for some of your listeners, it may be interesting for them to understand that little old Papua New Guinea, with its 8 million people, just up north of Queensland, plays a very significant role in Australia's, geopolitical security. So it's an interesting set of circumstances at the moment. But let's talk about the important stuff, and that's a bit about the Brian Bell Group. So the Brian Bell Group was founded in 1958, 62 years ago, by my grandfather, who started a gun shop at a little part of Port Moresby, which is the capital at Ella Beach. And that gun shop grew from being, selling innovative products, I guess, at the time, to, suddenly selling freezers, washing machines, and goods, predominantly major appliance type goods that weren't available in Papua New Guinea, under the mantra of, good quality products that you couldn't get elsewhere from anyone else, and with a an expectation that everything that was sold would be serviced by the business. And that saw the business grow from being this small enterprise in 1958 to what I would probably say is one of Papua New Guinea's larger retail businesses of its kind. What we're proud of at the moment, or over those 62 years, is that the business has built a really solid foundation, sticking true to its core values, and now it's very strongly recognised for all of the things that it set out to achieve in terms of reputation, trust, service, etc. And we work really hard on, three key areas of quality, service and value. And over the years, the business has grown from, again, being a small entity to operating across all the major regional locations in the country. We've got 16 different sites across 5 different organisational divisions that sells everything from fridges and freezers to Nike shoes. We're the agent for Nike. We sell chemicals to help you through COVID. We've got a division that sells all trade electrical products that, to fit out houses, etc. And we've also got a division that oversees over 120 different properties across the country. So it's a diverse business. We employ over 1,200 team members, with some of those team members being in our business for over 40 years. And so it's exciting, it's diverse, it is an interesting environment to work in, but also the people in Papua New Guinea are very genuinely passionate about family and about doing what they can to provide for their families. So the other part of our business that's we're very, very passionate about is our Sir Brian Bell Foundation. And so we can talk a little bit more about that throughout the conversation, but the Sir Brian Bell Foundation provides support to the communities in which we serve in the areas of health and education. So over that 62 years, we've built a business that not only does well commercially, but also contributes significantly back into our community.
So creating a real positive impact on the community of PNG. So one of the key things also in relation to your journey as a leader is that you have only, I guess, in your recent history, become part of the Brian Bell group as part of the role that you have now. So share just the journey that you undertook as a leader to take on the mantle that you now have.
I think if you think back on my personal journey, I mean, I was born into the business. Let's be honest. I grew up in an environment where I was surrounded by people in the business, and I was, sitting in trucks at 6 years old with drivers, having a bit of fun in school holidays versus, working there when all my mates were hanging out at the beach as a teenager. I left PNG to forge my own career in Australia, and did that predominantly through the Wesfarmers Group. And the Wesfarmers business is a very positive environment to hone your craft. And about 10 years ago, 2010, I was invited to join the board of the Brian Bell Group while I was still working in the Wesfarmers business, and I used my own leave time to do what I needed to do from that perspective. I decided in 2016 it was time to rejoin the Brian Bell business, because inevitably that was going to happen, but the timing was right for me to do that, and rejoined in an executive role. And in 2017 I was appointed to the chairman of the Brian Bell Group board, and have over the last couple of years worked on amalgamating multiple companies into one, rebuilding activity, surrounded by great people, and we've been able to re-energise the business from what it was, a tried and true foundational type business, into a more modern, contemporary environment, not only from the way we work, but the way we talk and engage with our customers, and do things a little bit differently from an innovation perspective. So you would have had access, I guess, in Australia to working alongside many leaders, being led by many leaders, having access to leaders at peer levels in other divisions within Wesfarmers. What were some of those traits that you saw the great leaders have? I was very fortunate to work with great people, and when you're in a business like a Wesfarmers, you get exposed to many, many people that you can take learnings from. What are some of the traits I think that For me, authenticity is a massive one for me. I think that if I think about the people that I've worked with or worked for or working next to that have had a significant role in shaping how I like to lead or how I like to be led, it's often those with a bit of humility, those with a bit of, with a serious sense of authenticity and genuineness, and people who, not only are great communicators and possess all of the things that, we know good leadership is all about, but also I think for me, it's as much about having people that, are happy to bring you along for the journey, are happy to support you as much as they want to support themselves. And, I've been fortunate enough to have worked with many of those people who have helped shape me in the way I like to lead. I don't want to be the guy who's at the front of everything. I don't need to be the guy who's on the postage stamp of everything, because if I've surrounded myself with a great bunch of people and we're all on mission, then ultimately we're all going to share in the success. And I'm equally as satisfied if someone else does, provided that we all win. So I think I've taken a bit of that over the years.
Excellent. So when you say left Australia and the retail world that we have here and the level of, I guess, maturity, for want of another word, and then started leading, I guess, in a greater sense or in a greater scope in PNG, what were some of did you see a shift within yourself as to how you led, or was there something that you had to be conscious and intentional about in respect of how you worked with your teams in PNG?
I think you absolutely need to adjust your leadership style to the environment that you're in. I think that, I think about my journey as a store manager to a regional manager to a more senior role, even in Wesfarmers. You move from being very hands-on, very focused, very, I guess, what's the word, focused on self in terms of outcomes and what you can control, to working on how you can get the most from the team that you surround yourself with. I think when I got to PNG, there's cultural sensitivities you need to be aware of, and growing up in PNG, I've got an advantage in that space, but I certainly, after nearly 30 years, had needed to re-engage around certain things. And there were things that I thought were important in my world in Wesfarmers that became less so in the PNG environment. And not to say that they're not important, but they were just deprioritised, or the priorities were changed. I think, though, that irrespective of all of the environments that you work in, there are certain things that you will always find that set you in good stead. So how you communicate, how you share your message, your level of warmth and empathy. And I found myself probably being a little more sensitive to some of those things in this role than I might have had in the past. I had a different level of sensitivity for some of the adversity of the people that I was working with, or that were working with me, that I otherwise may not have previously. And I think that was driven by the environment particularly. But I think that I've also learned to enjoy while I'm working day to day within the business, my accountability is a lot different to what it was before. So, working side by side with people and helping to get the most out of them so that the business wins, I particularly enjoy. And I would never be foolish to call myself a coach at all, but I get the luxury, I guess, of being able to spend a time in this part of the business to understand it while seeing other people succeed while moving on to the next one.
We're actually seeing a real shift, I guess, in the world of leadership. And it's interesting you mentioned that you wouldn't call yourself a coach, but more and more we're seeing a real emphasis on leaders in developing other leaders, in continuing the pipeline, so to speak, or the human system pipeline, whatever we want to talk about it. So a good leader is fundamentally a good coach through some of those characteristics that you spoke about, your communication, your warmth, your empathy. So a lot of companies in PNG utilise what we would potentially call expats or people to come over and run organisations. What do you look for, I guess, in your homegrown leaders within that sort of cultural aspect that is PNG?
Yeah, look, with Papua New Guinea people, despite what you might read on the Smart Traveller website, are very genuine. They get out of bed like everyone to do a good job. They face adversity that none of us can really imagine in a traditionally Western culture. So, we're talking about people who earn the equivalent of $1.40 Australian an hour to feed a family of 10 potentially.
Yeah.
So, it's a different environment. So you have to look for different things. There's a lot of ambition in Papua New Guineans. We're finding that, when you give people opportunities, they tend to grab them with both hands, and you see some, real motivation to succeed and do well for their families and for themselves. And I think what we're seeing in our business, we've spent a lot of time investing in leadership programs for our what we'd call that second tier of management, where you've got someone who's a supervisor who's shown potential and has an aspiration to do better, and we've put some of those people, 40 or 50 of those people, through leadership programs, and some of them have gone on to be great role models in our business, particularly some of the ladies in our business. We're very proud of some of the diversity shifts we've been able to make in recent times. But what we never can underestimate is the pull that the cultural difference has on individuals in Papua New Guinea that tends to hold and stifle some of their ambition. And what I mean by that is you've got a large family unit in a lot of cases that, is a massive pull on some of the decisions you make for yourself personally that holds back some of the people in our business. So we're working really hard to make sure we provide opportunities not only at work, but also, we provide housing opportunities for potential leaders that or people who've worked in our business a long time because the cost of living is so high. There's lots of different benefits that we can provide some of our team members to try to set them up for a greater success.
They love their sport in PNG, especially the game of rugby league, and they've just got such a passion for that particular game, and it would be wonderful to be able to see that, I suppose, that passion start to get shared within their own business ideals and whatnot. Not suggesting that's unlikely, but we've seen the success that the PNG Hunters, for example, have had on the football field. We can see the success of someone like Justin Olam with the Melbourne Storm.
He's going to win the Premiership this weekend,
Absolutely. So the chasing of success is sometimes just simply a matter of just maybe shifting our focus. So. With yourself, Ian, tell me about how you've dealt with some of those inevitable troughs, because, you left the family unit in PNG to make your own way in Australia, and that wouldn't have been easy at times. So during our journeys, we always find and have the inevitable downs, and of course we have the associated highs. But how do you deal with those troughs that appeared in your journey?
I think if I reflect on my journey, you're right. It isn't easy to, to say to the family, I'm packing up and moving to, a different country because I want to forge my own identity almost. And I think as a young person, I was motivated about setting my own course. And wrongly or rightly, I was fortunate enough to meet good people early on that were able to steer me, as you know. And I think that. As you face adversity, it's the people you surround yourself with that provide good counsel. I talk about my wife regularly, who is the voice of reason very often when I'm feeling sorry for myself, and often slaps me back into a good headspace. But I've been fortunate enough to have good peer groups, good mentors, good people that I work with that can provide that steer through those difficult times. And I think it's critical for anyone in any sort of leadership role to ensure that they've got, sounding boards. They've got, almost like grounding opportunities for them to, take a minute out and reflect or have a conversation with someone that can provide an objective outlook that you might otherwise not be able to see. And, whether that's someone that you've grown up with, someone that knows you very well and has a similar sense of values, it will always provide you with really quality outcomes in terms of your decision making, I think. And so I've been fortunate enough to been able to leverage those relationships over the time, and they've provided me in good stead. I've made plenty of errors and I've blown my foot off plenty of times, but often I think that some of those could have been a lot worse if I hadn't taken a minute to take stock.
Because we always, like I always talk about our relationship with failure, and so many people can hit a mistake, hit an error, and then that just stops them in their tracks. And it's our ability to be able to pick ourselves up, learn from what's happened, and then continue to forge our own path, which is really, really important for each and every one of us as a leader. You mentioned the Brian Bell Foundation. Just walk me through a little bit about some of the things that you're seeing or that you're doing within that space, or that's being done in that space.
Yeah, look, by way of a quick bit of background, so Sir Brian Bell was the founder of the Brian Bell Group. One of the things that people didn't realise was that he was had a massive passion for PNG and the people of PNG, and he was a philanthropist at heart. So he was, while he might have been perceived as a wealthy man, you wouldn't have known it from the way he conducted himself and the way he lived his life. All of the money that he might have made for himself over his lifetime was tipped back into giving to other people. So when he passed away, his direction to me was that I was required to set up a foundation to continue the good work that was being done while he was alive. And so in 2016, we established the Sir Brian Bell Foundation. And in those 4 years since we've been up and running, we've been fortunate enough to tip, the equivalent of 15 million kina back into the PNG communities. And that's everything from individual support to programs to organisational partnerships, where we've deliberately gone and targeted things like health and education programs. That's the mandate of the foundation. So when you think about the work that you can do, we've been able to do things like provide tens of thousands of cervical cancer vaccines to young women that otherwise wouldn't have been able to be vaccinated against that. We've been able to support the St John Ambulance organisation in PNG that may have, without support of the foundation and others, not been able to answer the phone and provide ambulance services when they were required on the end of the phone. We've identified a wonderful organisation up in the highlands of PNG that's helping to bring children out of poverty and out of orphanages and give them exposure to schools and different things. We're partnering with Book Belong Picketing, which is a wonderful organisation that teaches young Papua New Guinean children to read, which we all take for granted in a lot of cases in places like Australia, but in Papua New Guinea, providing those children with access to that early learning opportunity sets them up for amazing success in the rest of their life. So these are just some of the programs that we've got going over the last 4 years, and are proud to be partners or supporters of, that ultimately change the direction of young people, old people, or the people that you work with, inevitably for the rest of their lives. And what's really, really pleasing is that the money that's tipped into the foundation and back into the communities is driven by our business. So when our team members work hard, when our customers shop with us, when we do things well from a business perspective, the largest shareholder of the business is the Sir Brian Bell Foundation. So by way of dividends that every shareholder gets to enjoy, the foundation gets its funding through those dividends and then reinvest those back into the work in the community. So, people talk about the things that get you out of bed. That's good for your soul to know that all of your hard work and all of the things that you're doing are going back to providing an opportunity for someone that otherwise might not have it.
And you can see, I can certainly hear and feel that sense of purpose just in your voice while you were going through all of that. So that wasn't a spiel that you'd written down that you just shared. That's actually what it feels like. It's ingrained in you, Ian. So that's one of the wonderful things about the Sir Brian Bell Foundation. But the other thing that you've got some real pride in is some of the innovative stuff that the Brian Bell Group does.
Yeah, look, and again, this is just building on the foundations of the business. I think if you think about the Brian Bell story from 1958, a portly fellow from Chinchilla in Western Queensland turns up in Papua New Guinea he's a qualified pharmacist who decides that actually he can do more working in his own enterprise to provide quality goods to Papua New Guineans.
Yeah.
It's innovative just by its nature. And so, in the 80s, the Brian Bell Group was one of the first organisations in Papua New Guinea to go and direct source its merchandise. So in the 70s and prior to that, you'd have all the snake oil salesmen with their briefcases and their pamphlets acting as agents importing goods into Papua New Guinea.
Yeah.
The decision was made that people would get on planes and head to Asia and source directly itself. The organisation was one of the first to introduce its own brands of products, that it would create itself. So that whole private label activity was done by the organisation very quickly. And things like LED TVs were available in Papua New Guinea through Sharp before LED TVs were sold in Australia. So there's been a long history of innovation in the business, and so it's our obligation to maintain that as one of our core values and activities. So the team work really hard on product sourcing, on service delivery. We've changed the way our stores look and feel. And from an Australian perspective, if you got on a plane and had a look at one of our shops, you'd think, it feels like one of the ones that you see in Brisbane, for example. But for Papua New Guinea, it is at the forefront of the way retailing is done. So we've been able to take the learnings that we've got in other parts of the world and introduce those into PNG. So, I'm really proud of the work that the guys are doing to raise the standard for our customers, raise the standard for our shareholders, and make sure that the brand is far more contemporary and reflected more appropriately for 2020.
Absolutely. Now, a little bit back to yourself. So we know that leaders are readers, but I also know that you lead an incredibly busy life. What are you currently reading at the moment from a leadership perspective?
It's an interesting question. It's funny. I used to be, as a young person, always reading very actively, but I'm almost loath to admit that I'm not a huge reader now. And I think about the books that influence me. I mean, there's plenty of things that you read, but there's a few things that you go back to regularly. I've always been a fan of Stephen Covey's 7 Habits, and only because, not that I believe all the 7 Habits are fantastic, but you can take elements of Stephen Covey's conversation and suggestions and apply those to the world that you're in. And if you asked about leaders or people that you've worked with that have influenced you, it's just like reading a book. You might read 1,000 pages and think that 50 of them are fantastic, but you can leave the rest of them behind. I'm okay with that. I read a book a little while ago by Ricardo Semler called The 7-Day Weekend, where he ran a South American company that's studied by Harvard over and over again about how it's turned its business around by just having a different approach to the way it operated structurally, the whole organisation was different, and so that was quite meaningful for me. And I often wheel out the first 90 days book that I was given by someone many years ago when I started a new role. That I think it's always good to start the clock again on your first 90 days and go, well, how could I do something differently if I had a chance? And what stops today being day one of the next 90? So it's always good to have a reflection on those, but I'm loath to admit that I'm not a massive reader. I've turned into an executive summary, almost a Sesame Street style leadership work,
like a Blinkist. Let's get the summary and the key points. But you're right in respect of books. It really is all about what resonates with you and what you can put into play. And you mentioned Covey, and there have been so many times where I've been working with people and just some of those thought processes just come out. We've got to begin with the end in mind, or we've got to sharpen the saw, or, and even Ricardo Semler, he wrote a book prior to that called Maverick, which is fundamentally where he started his journey in and around what many people would consider quite a laissez-faire style of business. But ultimately, once again, you pick out the bits that resonate, you apply them in your life, and then maybe you go back and you try and find some more gold. So, you mentioned some great books there, Coffee, and that's.
I think for me, and I think about the Sesame Street style culture where 30 seconds, exec summary, and I take the the things I love about Seven Habits, the Sharpening the Saw is a great one. The End in Mind's a great one. I think that, if you reflect on those short, sharp messages and they mean something more to you, then really the remaining pages of the book are probably less important. And I think about some of the, we all like those motivational sayings, and we all like those posters that you see on the wall that might mean something in a few words. But, I think it was Teddy Roosevelt that said, people don't care how much you know until they know how much you care. And I go, well, I don't need a book to actually tell me how important that is to me, to when I might have a conversation with someone that I think it's important for them to understand where I'm coming from. So, I think about reading is good for you. People talk about how important it is that leaders are reading, and I don't disagree with that. But I think it's what you do with your time to get meaningful learnings that you can then use for how you want to lead, that whether it's a book, a saying, or a comic, as long as you're taking something from it.
Absolutely. I saw a fantastic Dilbert comic today that resonated with me. So
I did see that, actually, and I thought I'll remember that one.
But also, I mean, it's our mentors that we have, and some people you have very small contact with, but they've made a lasting impact. And Simon Bosley was certainly one of those in my career. And he provided a very simple concept called the feedback rules. And the feedback rules are, when you're receiving feedback, your rules, the only thing you have to do is smile, listen, and say thanks. And that's such a simple philosophy, but it's one that I've shared. It's one that I teach. It's one that I coach. Because as a leader, you don't ever want to be not getting feedback. And if people are reluctant to give you feedback, because you might get defensive, you might arc up about it, you might dive into the detail, you might try and justify what you did, whatever the case is, if that causes people to stop giving you feedback, that's bad for you as a leader. So you need to be getting that feedback. So when Simon said to me, your only role is to smile, listen, and say thanks, I just said, thank you. And that stuck with me. And I think Simon gave me that little gem probably 15 years ago now. And it just
resonated.
But it's the same with the people that you've been influenced by. There'll be little sayings that they've just said that just resonate. Stuart Browse, act as if, very simple scenario, but it's always acting, preparing for the next role. It's act as if you're already there. What would you be doing? So pretty powerful stuff.
I think there's lots of things that you can take away, and you're right. It's those nuggets that you remember for decades and decades that you pass on to people. I learned a lesson very early on about leadership intent, and I tell the story to people that I work with in my various roles, and I still get guys that I've worked with and have a chuckle every time it happens, but still got guys that I work with that say, shoot your message randomly, that say, how to take the truck out and burn it example today. Geez, it made me think of you. And, it's a story that I had where my grandfather was walking the floor of our business in PNG. I was only 17 years old, just finished school. The boys had a big truckload of rubbish, and he yelled at them and said, take that truck out the dump and burn it. And, wandered off, and off they looked at each other and off they went. About an hour and a half later, they stumbled back into the business, and he's yelling at them about, where have you been? Where have you been? And they said, well, we had to walk back from the dump because, we didn't. And he goes, what's wrong with the truck? And sure enough, when I raced out there to have a look, it looked like it had been hit with a nuclear warhead, because these boys had done exactly what he told them. He'd driven the truck out the dump and set fire to it. And while they thought it was a bit stupid, it gave me a really good, I had to deal with the fallout of that. It was a really good example for me about leadership intent. You can talk about your communication, you can have these one-off things, but how often do we, just spark out things that we need to happen in a moment of, quadrant one leadership, that we then take a minute to go, do we think that the message is really, really clear? Well, it was an expensive learning that particular day. And I've got plenty of examples where I continue to perpetuate the same mistake, perhaps. But I do enjoy telling that story to people that I'm working with or work alongside, and they'll shoot me a message every now and then, as I said, to say, had another take the truck and burn it example today. You made me think of you. So, it's one of those things.
Absolutely. Dirk Van Reenen on episode, I think, 232 of our podcast, actually shared another one that just every now and again you just get something so simple that it just blows your mind. And he said, Tony, the business with the best team will win. So there was just no if, buts and maybes. It was just the business with the best team will win. And none of this might win, may win, should win, could win. It's
no ambiguity.
Win. Yeah, it's just the best team will win. And that's something that every business should probably start thinking about. How do I create the best team because we're going to win? So in respect of, everything that's going on with you, Ian, what's the vision for you going forward?
Look, I'm fortunate to be surrounded with great people that are doing great things. So I get a lot of personal satisfaction out of seeing some of those things come together over the last 4 years. While the PNG economy has been a little flatter, and the world, in the last 9 months has been a little uncertain. Our business has had a vision in terms of its growth and the trajectory it intends to take for building on the 62 years and making the next 62 equally successful or better. And so we started a major capital investment program back in 2016. We've been able to realise some of that over the last couple of years, and just recently we've launched a number of big multi-million Kina projects that are some of the biggest in the company's history. So for me, if I think about what does the future look like, what does the vision look like, it's realising some of the potential of those opportunities that have been grabbed, and we're optimistic about what that future looks like for our business and for PNG. It's not without its challenges, but we're optimistic that our plan's solid. We've got a good bunch of people, and we're all focused on what needs to happen, and there's no shortage of opportunities. So for me, it's about realising that. It's about building on the good work that's been started. I think that, Papua New Guinea lags the rest of the world in terms of digital innovation. So I'm really optimistic about what our leadership position might be in that space.
Okay.
We've done a lot of work around, some of that cultural shift and how we engage our team members. We've raised the minimum wage expectation of our team members, so adding more value into their lives. So all of that for me is about maintaining some of those early wins, building on, some of those early wins and maintaining some of that momentum for me. And
so
I'm an easily satisfied guy, Tony. I don't, I keep a very low profile. I'm happy, if the business is winning, then by default I'm doing okay myself.
Humble and humility in a leader, you've got to like that. So which means you're probably not going to like the next question. So out of everything that you've accomplished, what are you most proud of?
Yeah, it's interesting. I guess I'm proud of the fact that I'm in a fortunate position now to do the things that I am able to do. I'm proud of the fact that personally, that I've got children who've grown up and are starting to find their way in the world. And from a work perspective, I'm proud of the fact that, in 2010, when my grandfather passed away, people knocked on the door 2 days later to say, this business will never survive. So do you want to sell it to us now? And so I'm proud of the fact that actually our business is stronger and better than it was in 2010. And I'm proud of the fact that, there's great people that are now sitting there going, well, actually parts of the business and the things we're doing are better than they were before. And that's recognised openly. So I'm proud of the fact there's a little portly old bloke sitting somewhere going, yeah, you're doing all right. You're probably spending too much money and or giving me plenty of feedback. But behind all of that, he'd be sitting there going, yeah, things are going okay. So those sorts of things keep me motivated.
So is there anything that I haven't asked you, Ian, that I should have asked you? So jumping on a soapbox or spruiking from the top of the soapbox? What would that be? What would that look like?
I think that's very unlikely, Tony. I think that any opportunity to get on a soapbox, I'm more than happy to find someone who likes that a little more than I do and is happy to jump onto that. I think I always get reflective of the difference between, say, some of the people that may be watching this or listening to this and their understanding of places like PNG. I always charge myself as being an ambassador for PNG and challenging myself to ensure that if I do have an opportunity to share a message, it is about, don't always believe everything you hear or read about some other place in the world. Jump on a plane when you can, BC, before COVID. Jump on a plane, go and explore different places, learn about different people, and you might find yourself pleasantly surprised about the opportunities that presents itself. It's hard to get people that want to jump out of their current environments, and you talk often about comfort zones, and get up to a place like PNG where they can add enormous value that they may never be able to do in a place like Australia. And I would encourage anyone who's got an appetite for adventure, who wants to make a meaningful leadership transition and add more than they're doing in their current environment to a business like a Brian Bell or others like it, to have that sense of opportunity and grab it with both hands. Because, while there's plenty of challenges and I could list plenty, there's equally so many rewards that I think people often underestimate. So for me, my soapbox would just be, it doesn't need to be PNG, it might be somewhere else in the world, but don't underestimate how much it can change your perspective by being in an environment that's not necessarily what you're used to.
That's a great message. So, Ian, how can people connect with you or Brian Bell?
Yeah, look, the Brian Bell Group is through all the usual www channels where, and all the different streams. But me personally, I'm not much of a LinkedIn fellow, but I'm certainly there. If anyone wanted to reach out, please don't hesitate. I can be contacted, no doubt, through Tony. He knows where to find me, of course. But and the Brian Bell Group, is on all the social platforms and things. But I'd like to think I'm reasonably accessible, whether it's email, whether it's through Tony's work that he's doing, or straight through places like LinkedIn or Facebook.
Absolutely.
Reach out if you want to.
And we'll put those links in the show notes. Ian Clough, it's been an absolute pleasure to have you invest some time back into the Today's Leader podcast. I hope you've enjoyed it. I know my listeners will have appreciated some of that insight, some of that experience, and hopefully learned a little bit more about a place that you love so well.
There you go. Well, I appreciate the opportunity to have a chat, and this is the best behaved I've ever been in a conversation with you, so I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Join the group of people impacted by seriously simple stuff to get you unstuck. The first book by Tony Coach Curl. Available at Amazon, Tony's Simple Stuff provides the tool for people to master your life and aspirations. 20% of every book sold supports Carter's cause.
I hope you found that conversation as riveting as I did. There was so much gold in there, the amazing work being done by the Sir Brian Bell Foundation, the innovation behind the Brian Bell Group itself, and I'm sure you took some gold from the take the truck to the dump and burn it story. But I want to touch on something that Ian spoke about, the benefit that leaders can bring to a place like PNG, bringing skills, knowledge and leadership, and importantly for the leader, allowing them to have a new perspective, a view of the world. So a new perspective and a new view of the world into your world. And to me, that sounds like a fantastic win-win. Now, Ian has inspired many throughout his career, has a long history of colleagues and a large network, people that he's mentored and people that have mentored Ian. Now, he made the comment that he isn't a coach, but great leaders are the ones that are developing other great leaders. Leaders develop other leaders, and they do that with a mixture of storytelling, mentoring, and coaching. So, Cloughie, you are a coach. Don't forget you can connect with Ian through the Brian Bell Group. The link is in the show notes. Now, in today's disruptive world, good leadership skills will always stand you in great stead. If you're looking to build better leadership skills, check out our Today's Leader platform that's now available at todaysleader.com.au. Our website showcases our podcast and our magazine. We are pleased to say our masterminds are now available under the Today's Leader brand. Supported by our network sites, Today's Leader has become a collective mindset for the leaders and entrepreneurs of today, forging the path of success for tomorrow. The mindset to make a difference, the ability to create an impact. Think and Grow Business hosts our Today's Leader Masterminds. Think and Grow Business, where we focus on personal, professional and business growth. Book your free discovery call today at thinkandgrowbusiness.com.au. Don't forget the Coach Curl Academy has now over 78 programs designed to build a better you. Join for just $1 jolly for that first month. The academy that equips you and enhances your mindset, your leadership and your business. Check it out at thecoachcurlacademy.com. Don't forget, where you are standing stronger, braver and wiser. Don't forget the golden rule. Don't be an arsehole. I'll see you all next week. Bye.